Good afternoon or good evening. Welcome to the Chaska City Council meeting on Monday, September 12th at 7:01. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Elise, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Here.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Here.
Councilmember Wong?
Here.
Councilmember Graf?
Here.
Mayor Winchell?
As you see, I'm filling in for Mayor Winchell. He'll be in a little while, but we are going to keep moving on the agenda. So brings me to item number 4, adopting the agenda. Can I call for a motion to?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. All right, that carries. Okay, that brings us to item number 5, visitor presentation. Is anybody here to present to us tonight? All right, come on down.
Libby Fairchild, 2678 Shadowwood Court in Chaska. A couple of months ago, I came before you to talk to you about the Friends of the Library sale, and we had a very good sale this year. But I threatened to come back and talk to you about Beyond the Yellow Ribbon, so I'm coming through with that threat. We have been in existence now 10 years. It was 10 years ago, September or October, I don't know the exact date, that we were proclaimed a Yellow Ribbon City. We're looking for someone from the city to serve on the committee because that's one of the requirements. And I've been very delinquent. I have reached out to the chief of police. We have to have someone from law enforcement, but I haven't been good about calling him about the meeting. So I'll be in touch with him. So that's one of the items. We're looking for someone from the city. It can be staff, it can be a council member, it can be, to represent the city. That's important. So I am here to talk about our golf tournament, which is our big fundraiser, and it's taking place a week from today, and I'm very pleased to say that we don't have any spots left for anybody to golf. The proceeds from the golf tournament, because we look for sponsors, goes to MACV, which is an organization that provides transitional housing for veterans in need. The first 2 years, those funds stay in Carver County. After the 2 years, they go throughout the Twin Cities area. Last year, we raised $25,000. We're hoping for more this year. In conjunction with the golf tournament, we do an online auction, and we've got some very interesting things this year. We have an Alaska fishing trip. We've got a couple bids on that already, I believe. We have a quilt. We have a Delvin Cook signed football with the number 33. Although his number's changed to 44, so someday that football's going to be worth a lot of money. So anybody, you don't have to be a golfer, and it's not all golf items. We have a Coach bag, we have high-end cookware, we have a rainbow play system offer for a birthday party at their showroom. So you just bring your kids in and the food, and they have time to play for couple of hours. You bring your chaperones in and stuff. So we've got a variety of things on that auction, and anybody and everyone is welcome to bid on any of the items. The auction is open now, so you go to Beyond the Yellow Ribbon of Chaska, go to the online auction, put your bid in, and we might have a few little bidding wars, but like I said, last year we raised $25,000. About a third of it through the online auctions, so we're hoping to do better this year. And that's all I have to say. Nice time to do some early Christmas shopping. There's some jewelry too, so.
I assume it's just online, the
Online
silent auction.
only, yep. It seems to work really well for us.
Yeah.
We have, I think we have 83 items on the auction right now, so please. Anybody and everybody should go online and take a look, do some Christmas shopping early.
Sure.
That's all I have to report.
Great.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming,
Thank you,
Libby. Nice to see you as always.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Anybody else here for visitors presentation? This would be something that's not on the agenda as an action item. Kevin, anybody on Zoom? All right, well, that moves us. Okay. All right, well, that's all right. Okay, well, that brings us to item 6A, approve the August 15th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, and second by me. So motion by Councilmember Hatfield, second by Councilmember Hubbard. Any discussion over the meeting minutes? No? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. All right, that moves us along to consent items. These are items that are on the agenda that don't need a big discussion, but certainly if anybody has any questions or anything, they can certainly ask. Any discussion or any questions? All right, I'd like to see if anybody would want to make a motion on the consent items this evening.
Motion to approve consent.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Grau.
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Hatfield. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that moves us along to action items. Action item 8A, adopt resolution number 2022-111, authorizing the chief of police to act as the signing authority for the master subscriber agreement.
Mayor and Councilmember, since Ryan got all dressed up and came in tonight, I'll just turn it over to him and he can make the presentation. Come on up, Ryan.
You do look very formal,
Yeah.
Chief.
Thank you for your time. I can keep this very brief this evening. But essentially, the action item or the resolution before you would authorize me to sign what would be an agreement or a contract that we would enter into with the Minnesota courts. And this would provide our officers a tool, which is web-based, that either could be used in the office or in the field, that if we have contact on some type of a call for service or we're doing some type of follow-up inquiry related to a call, that if there is some type of a order from the court relating to a family issue, that could be child custody or something related to that, or it also could be something that we would refer to as a protection order or a no contact order, which are, all of these above are common for our officers to come into contact with in the field in response to a call. For us to be able to obtain real-time data that reflects court orders, court rulings, so our officers can use judgment in the field and make the best decisions that they can when they encounter these kind of situations. So if the resolution was approved by council tonight, I would sign that agreement. Our office manager would forward that to the Minnesota courts. And then if approved on their end, we would enter into a contract, which would provide us access to that database system. Currently, there's no fee that's assessed for access. It does mention in the agreement that the imposition of fees is a possibility, but currently they do not impose fees, and if that ever were to come to fruition, they would contact us prior. So I promised I'd keep it really short, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Is there like a subscription length or a term length in this?
Not that I'm aware of. It's once the contract is entered into, it provides access. Obviously, I had mentioned if there is an imposition of fee, if that ever were to come to fruition, we would consider the agreement at that time. Otherwise, it's an open-ended agreement, which does come with requirements for access credentials, staff training, and acknowledgement of user requirements.
Anybody else have any questions on anything at all? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt resolution 2022-111, authorizing the chief to act as the signing authority for the master subscriber agreement.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Wong, a second by Councilmember Gra. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion carries. Congrats.
Thanks,
All
Chief.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that moves us along to 8B, negotiation of tax abatement agreement with RCS-RCA Oak Ridge LLC.
Mayor and Councilmember, this item in front of you tonight is in relation to the Costco site. And really, as we sort of work through the details of that, is really sort of the last piece to allow it to move forward. They do want to close on the site this fall and start work on grading on that. And to do that, they really need to have their tax abatement agreement in place to be able to do that. We've been talking about tax abatement on this site previously, but now we're starting to get into details of actually how that would be allocated. So I'll turn over to Elise, and she can talk generally about what the terms and conditions of that would be.
Yeah, so tonight we're asking for your authorization to go ahead and negotiate that actual agreement as Matt was talking about. So generally, we've outlined terms and we're continuing to work with the developer to go through those. So they've requested $1.84 million in tax abatement assistance, and this would be done over a 20-year term. This is about half the cost of the roundabout, which is what the money would be used for, is that the construction of the roundabout at PV and Highway 41. So this would be kind of split up two different ways at $1.84 million. About $1.1 million is what is owed in this development for area and trail charges, and that's outlined in the development agreement, and it is what the council saw earlier this summer when it was approved. Rather than paying that to the city, it would essentially be deferred in a sense where they would retain that money so they could pay for some of the upfront costs associated with the roundabout, and the city would reimburse itself over the 20-year tax abatement term for that $1.1 million. Additionally, as part of that, because it's a little unusual for us to do it this way, we would request a minimum assessment agreement or some other form of security on one of the properties to ensure that we are receiving that money back over that period of time. The remaining $700,000 would be in the form of a pay-go note to the developer, and they would use that for purposes of the roundabout construction. Additionally, as I mentioned, we would require a minimum assessment agreement or other security form on one of the properties. Well, the developer here isn't actually going to be owning any of the properties in the end. And so we've been talking with Continental Properties, which is the developer of the housing units, about agreeing to have that minimum assessment agreement on their property. And if they would do so, we would provide a financial cash incentive of about $50,000 to $75,000. We're still working on negotiating what that will be. And those funds would need to be used as part of their project development as well. So what we are requesting tonight is a motion to authorize staff to negotiate a tax abatement agreement with RCS-RCA Oak Ridge LLC, and for the mayor and city administrator to execute the agreement. Just a couple of things to note. If the terms deviate from what we've kind of outlined here in the staff report, we will bring that agreement back to you, so you see that. And additionally, as with any other tax abatement, there will be other things that you will see that have to come back to you formally in order to initiate that tax abatement. So you'll see that, but this allows us to get started, and as Matt indicated, there is very time sensitive with their timeline here. So that hence the reason why we're moving this along at a little faster rate than we normally would. The developer is online on Zoom if there's any questions for them as well.
One thing probably the biggest thing I forgot to mention as we're going through here, and Elise alluded to it, is that the dollars would go towards paying half of the roundabout costs. So we've determined that we're responsible as a city for half of those roundabout costs because they're paying for basically two legs that deal with, a lot of times they'd only deal with one leg of that, but because of the fact that they're coming in and requesting the development, and the users on the industrial park side of that, aren't changing. They could function the way they are. So we're saying, okay, you should be responsible for anything for the property owner's side, but the two legs that are public side would be something that would be the city's responsibility. And so this tax abatement from this development allows us to be able to use the resources from this development to pay for our costs for it. So we're not having to, have a levy increase to be able to address that. We can use the increased tax revenue from this project to support our costs for that.
Just a clarifying question on the request for action. It says, requested assistance from the city to help with the cost of the roundabout construction, then parentheses, which will be constructed the developer and not the city. I think there's a word missing. So what is that actually, is like, because to me, I read that as like, are they building the
They are
roundabout?
building it. So they're actually contractually, and this is pretty unusual. MnDOT doesn't typically allow this
That's
to
why-
occur.
That's why.
Yeah,
That's why I
yeah.
was confused.
Yeah, MnDOT doesn't typically allow this to occur, but one of the reasons that they are is that if MnDOT didn't allow this to occur, it would be required to go through a full public bidding process, because it would be a public project that we'd go forward with. MnDOT has indicated that they recognize that the developer can actually get it done for cheaper than probably either one of us could. So they're allowing, they're basically agreeing to allow the developer to do this work on Highway 41. Granted, they have to meet all the specifications
I
of
was
the
just gonna
project.
ask that.
Yep,
What is
so
size?
so
Okay.
MnDOT approves the plans, they approve the specifications, and then they basically make us responsible to inspect it to make sure it meets those qualifications. But the unusual part of it is that they're actually allowing the developer to do the construction here.
Interesting.
I assume it speeds up the process as well.
And it speeds up the
correct?
process pretty significantly.
So who does like the reviews and the accountability for, holds reviews for accountability and specs?
So we do. We actually go out and inspect it, and we have sort of, we have two things in our development agreement that sort of give us, quote unquote, the hammer in this. Is first of all, it says we're responsible for signing off in this, and that they can't move forward and actually until the roundabout is completed satisfactorily to be able to get their conditional or certificate of occupancy. But we're also, they have an escrow in place for all of the costs of these. And so just like any other construction project that we would do, if, say, Highway 41, if we're doing the construction on that, we get a payout from the contractor to say, here's how much you owe me for the work that I've done over the past month. We inspect it, make sure it occurs, and then we sign off on it before that money can get released. We're actually going to act in that same capacity here because we have the escrow agreement that actually has all the money that would pay the contractor. So we not only inspect it, but we have to actually inspect it and sign off before the escrow agent will actually release those dollars.
So I have one more question, and this is more on the financial side. So now, this particular one sounds like there's like a deferred taxing of this property. I mean, how is this different than like a TIF? Just to
No different.
No different. It's basically
No,
it's
it's, the difference between tax abatement and tax increment is in tax increment, you get the city, the school district, and the county share of dollars.
Yeah.
In a tax abatement, you can get the county and the school district, but they have to agree to it. We're only talking about city tax dollars in
So
this.
basically, TIF is a form of tax abatement. Would that be technically?
TIF is just another tool that we're much more limited in our ability to use it, rightfully so, because we're using other people's money.
Okay.
In tax abatement, we're using our own dollars.
Okay.
Because we aren't, so the county and the school district will get their dollars, the increase, just like they normally would in a tax increment. We're restricted much more on how we can use it, but if we put a tax increment district in place, we don't have to ask for the permission, it automatically comes to us.
But in this case, this is a broader tool because we have the ability to specify either the scope and the depth of that.
No, we're limited still, we're still limited on a maximum of 20 years.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's 20 years, but we don't have, we're not using, but we could ask for counties and school districts, but we're not in this case. We're only using ours.
Yep.
But that's part of the flexibility of it. But we're also able to define the, also the floor for it too, and I think that's what you had mentioned earlier in this, right? That there's like a minimum agreement for this, or a
Oh,
minimum
no,
amount?
we do that same thing with the tax increment too.
Do we? Okay.
And the reason we do, so the question is about the minimum assessment agreement. So basically, once a developer enters into a minimum assessment agreement, it's basically saying that their valuation on that property won't go below that amount going forward. Now, the reality is that it doesn't usually go below that going forward, because what you do is the county assessor's office also has to sign off on the assessment agreement. They will not allow that assessment to be set at a level higher than what it would normally be set at. And so, you know, typically you would see the valuation of a property continue to increase each year. This just says that there's going to be a base value, and what it does is it gives us some assurances that if for some reason something happened in the future, that we wouldn't have that valuation dip below where it started, because we need that start value to be able to recoup our dollars.
Gotcha. But much like tax or financing, it's dependent upon valuation increase of it to recoup the.
Yeah, but the increase happens immediately, because it's valued at, it's bare land now, and the minimum valuation agreement is based on what the base value would be with it fully developed.
Oh, so you're making an assumption against that rather than waiting for the valuation to increase as you go and have to wait for these.
We do set it. We don't have the minimum assessment start until when it would normally be fully taxable.
But you have to do it now.
But we have to
of
do it now
the
because we
roundabout.
want to make sure that that is the base, because we're providing the assistance now.
Yeah.
So we're basically ensuring that when they normally would be that value, that they are that value.
Right. So this basically helps us. This is more of like a.
It's a guarantee for financing, basically.
It's a guarantee. It's more like using kind of, I know, probably a bad metaphor, but sort of a fixed rate approach for paying back a mortgage, saying this is what you're going to be paying back across the lifetime of this tax abatement.
Yeah, it doesn't set the payment, so it only sets a valuation,
Right,
and that we assume that we can get the amount of tax abatement we need for that valuation.
Okay.
There is also minimum tax increment or minimum tax abatement agreements, which actually says that they're responsible for an actual dollar amount. It's sufficient in something like this to basically set it at a valuation amount.
Okay. Because in this particular case, is that because the value is relatively limited to the amount that it is rather than a much larger project?
Yeah, I mean sometimes these minimums can be a limitation too. I've seen these minimum assessment agreements been in place long enough to see that sometimes the assessor's office can look at it and just value it on what the minimum assessment agreement is. But we just need to make sure it at least hits that.
But pretty much it ends when the amount is repaid.
Yep.
Okay, so whenever that happens to be, then it runs out and done.
Yep.
Okay.
And chances are it's not going to take 20 years. We're pretty conservative on those estimates when we look at those, because again, we don't want, and we've talked with a developer about this, we're not looking to put them in a position where they're paying more in taxes. They should be paying the same amount of taxes that they pay regardless if there's an abatement or not in place. It's just that now we're taking these dollars that are being allocated from it and putting it to pay off our costs for the roundabout. So it's a way for us to be able to capture the resources from that development to go towards our cost in the development.
A question back on them building it themselves. So I assume then it's done, inspected, cost goes up and go and everything. The maintenance of that would be a MnDOT.
Yes.
Like they take that over.
That's part of the requirement, is that they have to actually dedicate over those improvements to MnDOT. That's one of the reasons they require the inspection, for us to inspect it, for us to control that, is because eventually they're taking over the maintenance of that.
That's good to know. It's good to know it'll stay consistent. So, any other questions or discussion at all? All right, well, I'd like to entertain a motion for 8B, the negotiation negotiation of the tax abatement agreement with RCS-RCA Oak Ridge LLC.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Wong and a second by Councilmember Hatfield. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, nay, or say nay. All right. Sorry, I'm stumbling through this tonight.
You're doing
We're
great.
muddling
Doing
through.
fine.
All right. Okay, so that brings us down to 8C, adopt resolution number 2022-112, establishing a preliminary maximum city tax levy for taxes payable in 2023.
All right. Let's see here. And try to share my screen. As I'm doing that, Mayor and Councilmember, the item in front of you tonight is an action item that we need to take each year, which is to establish our minimum tax levy, maximum tax levy for the upcoming year, so in this case for 2023. We set that in September. We're allowed to bring that tax levy down when we set the final budget in December, but we're not allowed to go up. One of the additional requirements that the state has now is that we also have to establish our preliminary budget. Now, unlike the preliminary tax levy, the preliminary budget is just to give people an idea of what our budget number. Oh, he's gonna make it for the whole presentation. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
So the budget, setting that preliminary budget is basically a way for people to have a general sense of what our overall budget is for the year, beyond just the tax levy that we set. I'll be going through a presentation tonight. The council has seen this for the most part, this presentation, as we've gone through the 3 work sessions that we've had over the course of the summer. But this is really, people are invited to the work sessions, but this is really sort of the first public meeting that we have that sort of introduces the budget and the tax levy for this upcoming year. This information, if it's adopted tonight, will be used by the county auditor's office to be able to put in the truth and taxation statements that are sent out in mid-November, which not only show people what the impact of decisions on tax levy would be for them and their individual home, but also gives them information on when our truth and taxation hearing would be, so that if they have any comments or concerns, questions, that they'd be able to come to that and share them, or share them with us previously. So, with that being said, I'm going to jump into this presentation and really start with just a reminder of some of the discussion items that we had from last year's budget process. So that was for setting the 2022 budget. So last year, when we were going through the same process, we were talking about the continued utilization of our tax levy policy. Our tax levy policy was established back in 2015, sort of following changes that we saw during the recession that we saw back in 2008 and 9 through about 2013. But it's really to limit tax levy growth to capture only new growth and expenditure inflation. And that's really because those are really the 2 things that, if you're not going to change your service level, should be the things that actually change the amount that it should cost to provide those services, and only increasing the levy beyond this if new programs or initiatives are added. And then last year, the other big item that we talked about was the continued implementation of our capital asset maintenance program, which is $1 million towards our camp program, which is really replacing assets that we've already invested into. A couple other things that we talked about last year in the process, we talked about reinstituting our staffing study implementation. So this was a program that we started back in 2020 to fill a gap after doing a staffing study through Baker Tilly, our financial advisor, determined that citywide, we are about 16 employees short of where we should be at that point, and that we came up with a 4-year plan to how to implement that. We went through 2020, and then COVID hit, so in 2021, we put a halt to that process until things sort of got back to normal. And then for 2022, we re-implemented that program and then have 2 years left to implement that program in 2023 and 2024. And then we continued to work on our general fund reserve balance. We kept in place something that we had added in 2021, which was $300,000 dedicated towards building up our reserves to help us. This is really to help us take some of the recommendations coming from our auditors about the level of reserves that we should have to keep our current bond rating. We have seen success in this since we did this. We actually saw the fund balance increase by $1.1 million in 2021, and we expect that's going to happen in 2022 as well. As far as our budgeting objectives, we have a number of them that we've used to help us establish our budget. So first one is supporting our budgeting programs that help Chaska strengthen its mission of being the best small town in Minnesota. Utilizing our existing levy policy, so again, limiting tax levy growth to capture only new growth in the community and expenditure inflation, and only increase this levy beyond this point if new services, assets, or initiatives are being added. And again, that was a policy that we established back in 2015. Third objective is to maintain our existing high-quality service levels. Fourth one is to fully fund the maintenance and replacement financing of our vehicles, equipment, and physical assets on a regular schedule so that we can ensure sustainability of the investments we've already made. Next one is to fund new programs only after existing necessary programs are funded. Next one is budgeting, utilizing a plan that avoids drawdown of our general fund reserves. Next one is fully funding our levy needs of our street reconstruction program. And then the last one is developing a long-term budget plan that's sustainable from a resource perspective to support service levels that residents expect. So the budget environment. So it's always important for us to sort of understand where is our environment sort of big picture as we're looking at this next year's budget. First of all, the impacts of COVID on the general fund have been pretty minimal during the 2022 year, especially in the general fund. We're really, for all practical purposes, back to normal there. We're still recovering in our recreational funds, especially such as our community center, where we're continuing to see growth back of the membership that we lost during that time period, but it's still not completely back to normal. And then our curling center operations have really returned to near normal to where we were prior to COVID. We've continued to see significant growth in the community over the past year. Currently, our numbers that we budget for permits are expected to exceed what we expected or what we set for the budget this year. Interest rates could impact the pace of development as we move into the upcoming year, but that's something we'll have to pay attention to. And then we've seen new growth in the community, and the strong real estate market increases have increased our taxable market values in the community significantly over the last 12 months. And we'll see that as we look at our market values. First of all, this list sort of looks at our both our overall market value growth from 2016 forward. And you can see, we've seen anywhere from a low of 2.8% in 2020 to a high of about 9.14% in 2019. And then 2022, we saw a 22.35% increase in overall growth and 2.17% of that in new growth. So most of this, we tend to see our market values for tax purposes lag about a year to two behind when we see any types of major impacts in the real estate market. Obviously, over the last couple of years, the real estate market has been extremely hot in the Twin Cities area, and we've seen pricing on homes go up pretty significantly. We've seen that really across the board on all aspects of the real estate market, where we've seen some pretty dramatic increases.
So that's why we're probably looking at that 22.35 versus.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's, it'd be better to see those spread over a couple of years. But it's really sort of impacting us based on when that impacted the market. So, the county assessor's office looks at that as of January 1st of a given year. And so given when the real estate market really hit its peaks, they saw it really sort of happen all at once. Most market value growth is coming through increases in existing properties, and I think a lot of people have seen that as people have put up their homes for sale because they've been able to get a lot more than what they paid for it. So 20.18% of the total 22.35% growth was coming through existing residential existing properties. And then another environmental factors will continue to see $0 in local government aid in 2023. From a building permit perspective, building permits over the last 2 years have been very steady. We're seeing growth in all sectors of the economy, including new single-family homes, industrial and commercial projects as well. This chart below sort of shows where we were, and actually this is from back in July. We're well beyond this at this point, and we fully expect that we're going to see a year as high, if not higher, than 2021 for the total number of units that we'll have added in the community. And we expect that our building permit revenue, which we budgeted about $1.5 million last year, that we budgeted last year about $1.1 million. We budgeted similar for this year, and we think both years, last year we did see about $1.5 to $1.6 million in building permit revenues. We expect to see the same thing this year as well. But we are planning for some slowdown in growth because of the rising interest rates. I think that's something that we can expect, although I will say that we haven't really seen it. We keep track on a weekly basis of how many housing permits that we actually have pulled, and I haven't seen much of a change at all. We're seeing about, typically 4 to 6 residential building permits per week, and that's been about the number that we've seen consistently over the entire summer. And we also have some large commercial industrial projects that are moving forward now too, which is definitely increasing to that building happening in the community. So when this chart shows, this chart is actually generated from the Carver County Assessor's Office. This is what they provide to us to give us sort of an overall picture of what happened in our for our taxable market values. And these are the market values that will be for payable 2023. So again, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, 22.35% is the overall increase. And then in the residential market, we saw a 24.61% increase. Commercial industrial was a 14.05% increase. Apartments were a 21.30% increase, and ag was an 8.55% increase. And it's interesting to point out that for 2023, for taxes payable, we'll have about $4.2 billion of value in the community that we have for taxable market value. So we have definitely grown from a market value perspective. Again, over 90% of this growth in market values is related to existing property values. And like we talked about before, is that taxable market values tend to lag about a year behind what we actually see in the actual market. In 2021, obviously we were sort of in the midst of a very hot residential resale market, but our overall increase for taxable market value was only 4.9%. But that was really looking back about a year or two before that. When you look,
That 8.55% of ag, how is that just based on percentage of land that's left in our, what is
well,
that?
it's
What does that
based
mean?
on, what it's really saying is that the land that's still out there for ag
It's increasing in
is
value.
development property and it's increasing in
Yeah.
value. And we've definitely seen that as we've seen, I guess maybe not as we've seen, but we've heard what people are getting for their properties has definitely been increasing. This shows a distribution of Chaska's market values, and this has remained relatively stable for a long time. And to me, what this really shows is that, the base of our community is residential, but we have a really good, healthy mix of commercial, industrial at 9%, apartments at 7%, and then the ag land is really the remaining land that's out there remaining to develop. This chart shows you sort of what we've seen from a visual perspective for taxable market values. I've pointed this out in past years that 2009 and 2010 was really sort of the peak that we saw of sort of our growth between 2000 and 2008, which was a really there was a lot of building that was occurring back in the early part of the 2000s, and we saw our peak for value in 2009 and 2010, and then we saw for the first time ever market values go backwards. And it took until 2016 or 17 to actually rebound stuff that we lost going all the way back to 2009 or 2010. So it took a long time to recover after that recession, not quite a decade, but quite a while.
I remember you saying that it would take us at least 5 years, and what it ends up being 6 and 7.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time to come back from a drop.
Yes. But you can see, not only did it come back, it thrived. I mean, we saw values come back pretty dramatically. And you can see, especially between 21 and 22, the amount of increase that we saw for taxable market values. And we're showing here that a 2% increase for the next 5 years. We've actually seen about an 8.8% annual increase in market values over the last 5 years. So history would tell us that the numbers that we're showing for the projection forward are lower than what we probably will see, but we try to be a little bit conservative when we're looking forward.
Well, we still have a kind of a ghost period coming up here a little bit. We don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we really don't know what's gonna happen. With that being said, we continue to hear from industrial developers that say that there's still an 18 million square foot deficit for industrial in the Twin Cities area. There's not many spaces left from here going in towards the city to actually build. And the Southwest has traditionally been a pretty hot industrial market. And industrial will lead to houses because people will move to town, it leads to houses, and then typically commercial follows that. We'll point out that you'll hear our recommendations as we're going through for what to do for 2023. Based on the market value growth that we've seen, we would actually see our tax rate go down by 1.53% with the recommendations that we're making, even with our building program and staffing study. I'd go from a tax rate of 32.083% down to 31.359 or 592. So definitely a different sort of market that we're in now. I always like to throw out sort of what we've seen for new construction increases in the community, because I think the one thing that is critical when we're looking at it, and this is in our tax levy policy, is if we want to keep our service levels the same, we always have to at least make sure that we're capturing the new growth that happens in our community. Because for every new residential unit we have, new commercial unit we have, there's some increase in costs and service for policing or for road maintenance or any of those types of things that occur. So that's why I think it's important for us to understand. You can see that even during the recession years, we saw new growth occurring in the community. Local government aid, again, we will not see anything happen for 2022. As I shared with you guys at the last meeting, we were at $1 million back before we started losing aid. And I think that the important thing to recognize is that we never formally recaptured or re-levied for any of that lost local government aid. So when we look specifically at things like our staffing program that is about $1 million, part of the reason that we weren't able to really keep up with staffing is we never really captured those lost resources when we lost them to begin with. So, I think once we get past the staffing study implementation, we really would have recouped those lost revenues that we saw with the loss of LGA over the last several years. This is our building permit revenue. So the two tall lines in 2021 and 2022, those represent 2021 represents our actual, which is about 1.5 million. 2022 in this one represents what we think is going to be, although I expect it's probably going to be higher than this. So we put it at least 1.5. But you'll see for 2023, we're not recommending that we budget at that amount. The reason being is it only takes one large commercial industrial project to not happen to all of a sudden not see that amount of growth or building permits occur in the community. So we're trying to be a little bit more cautious with that. And then if we do like we did this past year, end up generating more than we anticipated, that we can put those into our general fund reserves to be able to help us in those years that might not be as good at building years as others. We continue to see our population rise. So you can see in 2021, we saw 225 new units. 2022, we put that we expect that we're going to see about 200 units. It could be more than that, but that would put our population at just over 28,000. Which matches up pretty close. It's just within a couple hundred of what the Met Council came up with their estimate for our population. So we're pretty close to what the Met Council is showing too. And then shows if we increase by 150 units each year, that we can expect our population within this 5-year period to get pretty close to 30,000 residents. Our ultimate build out we expect is about 37,000 people. So our electric transfer, so one of the things that we do with our own electric utility is that we have a 10% electric transfer that comes from our electric fund into our general fund. We charge this as basically a right-of-way fee, which we also are in the process of charging for all utilities, electric utilities, which are in the community, including Minnesota Valley and Excel. It's for basically compensating the general fund, the general public, for the acquisition of right-of-way to be able to put those utilities in. So you can see 10% transfer in 2022 is going to be about $4.5 million. It should be pointed out that we continue to do this, but our rates have continued to be significantly less than Excel. Now, talked about it a few weeks ago, everybody's rates are high now, but our rates continue to be, our wholesale rates have been 10% lower than Excel. So we've been able to continue to perform well and support the general fund too.
Do we see anything future-wise with you sitting on MMPA? Does that continue, that growth? Is it gonna taper off? Any magic ball?
Well, for us, I think it's going to continue to expand. And I think one of the things that we have to really be looking
But I
at.
mean, our costs, like the.
Oh, our
the overall electric cost, or they
Yeah,
see
in fact,
natural gas, are they talking that it might come down again, or is it gonna, we're gonna stay in never land here?
I think we're going to, for the next several months, be staying. Now, one thing that's gonna change is that we're getting out of that peak cooling season. And so, you know, the rates might be high, but people's bills are gonna be lower, because there won't be as much usage. It's like a double whammy when it happens in July. It's your peak usage, and it was the peak cost.
But then we'll go into natural gas for heating, so.
Yeah, and you know, CenterPoint actually just went through a rate case because of the whole Texas issue that happened a little over a year and a half ago, where they had a significant amount of usage of very expensive natural gas when Texas had that cold snap. So yeah, I mean, it can impact people through that too. I do know that MMPA is going to be getting out shortly, sort of what they sort of project coming up over the next several months. So as soon as I have that, I'll share that with you guys. Major baseline discussions for 2023, so this upcoming year. So again, like last year, continuing to look at the utilization of our tax levy policy, like we have in the past. Continued implementation of our capital asset maintenance program, which was known as our CIP. That's actually part of our base levy level tax. It's part of that, what's included in our tax levy policy as in our base level expenditures. I separated out because I just want you guys to see the projects that we're going to do, but it's included in that base level. There's not an additional tax to support that. Continued implementation of our staffing study, as I mentioned before. We have 2 years remaining on that program. And then the start of the implementation of our 4-year building improvement plan, which that's been the major focus of our discussions over the past several months, and a lot of the outreach that we've had in the public over the last several months has been around that building program. So as far as our operational tax levy, so again, our policy focuses on establishing a levy based on factors that impact our actual cost of services. So it's not saying that, you know, our rate is so much and we just collect the revenue based on that rate. We say, okay, if we're going to change, we should change it based on what we actually have in increased costs. So that's expenditure inflation and new growth are the ones that directly impact that cost of service, and that you know, that our cost of providing the same service increases because we have new residents to provide that service to, and because we have inflationary impacts to our costs as well. And that the policy would go on to say that we'd only add to that if we had a new program that we're adding, and that we should add it based on the actual cost of that program. So our staffing study and the building improvement program would be examples of that. So for 2022, we saw this in the chart, our new growth was at 2.17%. We put in a number of inflation of about 5%. We all know that inflation hasn't been 5%. It's been closer to 9%. But because we're talking about some of the bigger impacts with being able to look at our building program, we're suggesting that we put a cap at that inflation rate at 5%, or right around 5%, because we think we can balance our budget doing it that way, and just recognizing that our building program is going to increase costs, and we're trying to keep it to a minimum. So based on that approximate 5% of inflation and 2.17% in new growth, our operational levy would increase by 7.28%. And you know, this is what would be needed to provide the services we already have in place. So based on our anticipated increase in net tax capacity, so we're actually seeing about over a 24% increase in our tax capacity in the community for this next year. We would actually see our tax rate go down significantly if we were to address only our baseline services. In fact, it would probably be a decrease of over 17% in our tax rate if we were to just deal with our baseline services. But the impact for a baseline growth on a median value home is, and the median value home in the community now is $370,700, would be about $4.50 per month to deal with those baseline services. So again, included in those baseline services is a camp program. I'm only separating it because I just want people to understand what are some of the projects that they can expect for next year. So this was a program that we took 4 years to fully implement. In 2017, that was the first year that we had reached up to $1 million that we put into this each year. And it really includes those basic, funding those basic city assets like street overlay program, our seal coating, resurfacing our trails, rehabbing our neighborhood parks and community parks, and then rehabbing things that, you know, miscellaneous things that we have like parking lots or retaining walls or things like that, or pavers. So in 2023, the three big items that are on the docket for next year is about $500,000 that would go towards our overlay program, which would include the Western Ridge neighborhood, Autumnwood South, and then the Wildflower Lane area. We have $500,000 allocated towards the remodel of City Square Park. We have a lot of work to still get to a point of you know, getting plans put together for that, but we'd like to be in a position to try to do the remodel of that park while Highway 41 is closed, so that we try to have as little impact. Well, if we're going to have a bigger impact, let's have it while there's already impact going on. And then
Would that be a bid out, or would that be our own staff doing some of that?
a little bit of both.
A little both?
Yep. And then trail resurfacing, we try to resurface 3 miles of trail each year. It costs 20,000 miles per, or $20,000 per mile of resurfacing, so we include $60,000 per year. 2024, we have the street seal coating overlay program. We have trail resurfacing. We have general work that we need to do at the MSB. Rehab of the Hickory Street and Shadow neighborhood parks, and then retaining wall improvements. We are looking at the, Mayor, you had made the request of seeing if potentially we could look at Lions Park for that year to try to match up with the improvements that we're making to shelter there. So we're taking a look at sort of the overall park program and what we could do there. So that's something we'll have more information as we get further into the budgeting process.
Like I say, it's nothing, certainly anything that wants to cause some budget issues, but if it can work, then the whole park's rehab together, and it just, kind of one of the things why it's already tore up. It'd be good to just keep doing most of the amenities.
Yeah. And then for 2025, again, Lions Park, we might shift that around. We have our street seal coat that we try to do $500,000 a year, and the other big one would be Lions hockey rink and light replacement is one that needs to get replaced, and that would be similar to what just happened up in Clover Ridge at the hockey rink up in that community park.
This goes into more detail than we need to, but I'll ask the question, we can talk it later too. With Lions Park, like some of my interactions with Lions Park is major drainage issues. Does that get it, I mean, like when it heavy rains, it puddles and dugouts and puddles in there. Is that, when you rehab or look at a park reconstruction, would that get looked at?
Some of it gets addressed with this, with the park shelter improvements that are being made, because a lot of that drainage issue is happening right around the park shelter itself.
It is, yeah.
I'd have to talk to Brian about
Yeah,
the
I'm
rest
just
of
curious,
it,
because
but,
that, like,
yeah.
I mean, that is,
It's actually an issue we have in a lot of our community parks.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Community park, we have an issue in like, baseball field 4. It's the one with the grass infield in it. We
With
have
the
drain-
wetland behind
With the
it.
wetland behind it, and so,
We could barely drive in there when we built that. I'm surprised we put it there, but it was pretty wet. I think we tiled it. I think somebody
yes,
came
we,
in and
we,
tiled it.
yep. But it's, drainage has been an issue in some of our community parks. It's-
Chaska soil.
Yeah.
So are you saying the ball fields, or are you saying the
No,
outer?
it's to his point, it's a lot around the, like it's a pinwheel, right? Like you kind of have it's around the pinwheel of the shelter. It's kind of that intersection. The fields seem fine. It's like your dugouts and your sidewalks into it. And in
Yeah.
between the fields, the water tends to sit and has nowhere to go because the fields are draining towards the creek and towards the sides, but the water gets stuck in the middle there. It's kind of, and has no place to go. And it's muddy and messy and you're there with young kids. It's like the most attractive thing for a kid and the worst thing for a parent.
Yeah. No, it's definitely around that area, the shelter definitely has been an issue.
That's part of the park amenities.
It's a swimming pool.
Splash pad.
Yeah. This is really minor, but I think it's pretty cool. Lions are the actual Lions are investing quite a bit of dollars into the rehab of that shelter. And as part of that, we're putting in one of those Lion's Head drinking fountains. I thought they were really cool when I was young, and I think that could be a nice attraction for kids to come down to the park and stuff. But that's getting put in with the shelter building.
They started coming up out of the ground already with it?
No, last Friday.
Tore it down.
I think it was Friday. They tore it down. Next thing is our staffing study implementation. So this is, it's an ongoing program, but this is a new thing. So again, staffing study was completed by Baker Tilly, who was our financial advisors back in, it was about 2017, 2018. We got to a point in 2020 of actually starting to put dollars towards that, which basically we determined that there was if we looked at over a 4-year period with a $1.5 million gap, it was $375,000 that were more general fund expenses, so tax levy supported, and about $125,000 of that coming from our enterprise funds. So some of our positions like water and sewer maintenance employees, stormwater maintenance, they're supported by our utilities. So that's why we had, and also building maintenance, there's enterprise fund buildings that are maintained too. And so we want to make sure that they're contributing to that as well. So that's what we established in 2020 was basically the $500,000 a year for 4 years to address the positions, plus $500,000 to go towards building maintenance activities, because we up until this point, we hadn't had a building maintenance department to actually deal with that. So 2021, again, we did delay it by 1 year because of COVID, and then we restarted again last year. When we did restart it last year, we did talk about one thing that our staffing study was short on, was in our police department. And we identified over the last 3 years of the program that there was a need for adding 1 officer per year for those 3 years. So the total amount for that, for the remaining 2 years of the program, and this was the same amount last year, is $487,000 of additional tax levy for each of the remaining 2 years, plus $125,000 for each of the remaining 2 years in the enterprise fund budget. So if we address that on the median value home, the $370,000, it should say $370,700 is the median value home, that adds an additional $4 per month. So between the baseline tax growth and the staffing study, it has an impact of approximately $8 per month on the median value home. As far as the positions that we have remaining in the last 2 years of the staffing study, so for 2023, we have a second city planner position being considered, an economic development coordinator position, a water sewer maintenance worker, a park maintenance worker, and our 29th patrol officer. And then the 2024 plan positions would be our building maintenance worker, which would be the 5th of our 5 positions that were identified, network support specialist, a stormwater maintenance worker, a street maintenance worker, the second water sewer maintenance worker, and then patrol officer number 30. So those would be the remaining positions left in those 2 years. And then once we get those positions filled, you know, that was really to get us to where we should be now, and then any new positions in the future would be attributed to growth. So they would be added based on the need for increasing services, but also revenues increase too because of the growth that's occurring in the community. 2 positions that are included in our staffing recommendations for this year that aren't part of the staffing study and really are growth-related positions is our 3rd rental inspector slash full-time firefighter in our fire department. As we talked last time, we just have approved 500 new rental units in the community. We do have rental license that we require for each of those rental units, which then we go out and actually inspect each of those units on a regular basis. And so the rental rental license fee would support this 3rd position, which also then helps fill some of our daytime firefighting needs as well. And then the community engagement coordinator position, this is one it was really meant to help provide additional resources towards some of the work that was already going on within, you know, especially during COVID, when we started the Chaska Cares program and some of the things that were more people-centered services. You know, we've had great work occur from, you know, people like Julie Janke in our Parks and Rec department, who is really saying, how do we add the proper resources to that and provide support to allow that to occur and really put even more emphasis towards our people-centered services. So this was something that came out of our department, our last department head council retreat that we had right after COVID. Yeah, pretty much right after COVID. So this one is one that actually would support every department in the city, and so each department would need to contribute about $10,000 per department to be able to fund this position. So it's not a huge lift by any of the departments, but together, putting their resources together, we can create somebody that can really help emphasize those community or people-centered services within our community. Well, I already talked about this.
Would they work with Julie then? Is that
Yeah.
how they would work?
So that the intent would be is to, you know, Julie would continue to go on and do the stuff that she does. The hope would be is that this would allow us to have some resources to be able to spread it through other departments in the city too, and also support her, because Julie goes outside of the police department now. So really to provide her some support. One of the, you know, some of the support that she was getting during COVID was a lot of it was coming from the Park and Rec department. But once the Park and Rec department sort of got back and running full steam, they just don't, they have their own jobs that they need to complete for programming and things like that, and so they're not able to provide as much support towards that. And so it's really saying, how do we have somebody that's dedicated to this, can go across the entire organization and help supplement things like the things that Julie's doing. So those were sort of the first 2 items as our baseline and our staffing study. Our last item that really has been the one that we've put the majority of our effort or discussion into over the last several months is our building improvement program. So our facilities, we've talked about this before, are over 30 years old. with little reinvestment that's been put into these buildings over time. And really, space has not been added to accommodate the growth of employees, equipment, service needs, things like that. The facilities were built originally using one-time dollars, so there really hasn't been the ability to take retiring debt and be able to roll it into sort of what our new needs have been. And our tax levy has historically been low, very low, one of the lowest in the Twin Cities, which really hasn't given us a lot of additional resources to be able to put into reinvesting into our core assets. So as we looked at this, and this is something we talked about in our council department head retreat, but we really sort of came out of that, and one of the first things we did is we hired an architect at Leeway Daily to not just say anecdotally we have an issue, but let's put some actual figures to this. So we hired Leeway Daily to really look at what do we really need from a space needs, and coming up with concepts of how we could address this, but also a construction management firm, RJM Construction, to complete what we felt was really important, is to get a good sense of what the costs of these dealing with these issues would be. So they identified the square footage needs of every general fund department. They developed a concept plan to address each of the department needs, and then they developed conceptual pricing to accomplish implementing the building recommendations that were being made. My mouth is getting really dry. All right, the findings of this study were presented to the council in May, along with recommendations for how to fund these facilities. So we did have Leeway Daily prior to COVID do a space needs analysis, which really sort of served as the basis for this. And even as we had our council department at retreat, we talked about, well, here's generally what they talked about for space needs analysis. They really dug in this one, and not only sort of took those space needs, but then also said, how could you develop some concept plans to be able to address the building needs out there? So this planning included the building of a new library. So we've had quite a bit of input from the public about desire for a library that better fits the space needs for a community our size. We're about a third, if not greater deficit in what we typically would see for a library for a community this size. And then looked at how to recapture that needed space in City Hall for city services. I also looked at the municipal service building and then our public safety campuses as well. So since the May meeting, there's been significant efforts to educate the public on these needs, the concept funding and building plans, the impacts to a medium value home for implementing a program to address these facilities. And we've gone to park parties. You guys have been at all of it. So we've done a lot of the outreach to the public, and at least what I've heard throughout this is, nobody likes the thought of having to pay more. That's just I think that's just a given. But I do think that people have understood the needs that are out there for the facility, and recognizing that improvements are needed for this, and that we need some type of a plan to be able to move forward with this. Basically, the plan that we recommended back in May was to implement this program over a 4-year period, and basically doing it so that we could really not see the impact of a program all in 1 year, but how do we address it over a 4-year period from a funding perspective so that we could try to mitigate the impact and also try to allow growth to try to take care of some of that as we move into these future years too. So the following was the priority list, and this is in order of how we sort of saw the priority. First and foremost is a public safety facility. So our greatest need right now is in the police station. The police are housed in about 8,000 square foot. They really should be in about 40,000 square foot to meet our needs. And the biggest aspects of concern there is not having the adequate facilities to be able to do the things that we need to do from a service perspective, but there's also some pretty significant safety and security concerns for our employees in the police station compared to other facilities. And so how do we develop a campus that meets our community needs, but also addresses those deficiencies that we have in our facility now? The second would be our municipal service building. This building is about half the size it should be, and it's pretty easy to see when you visit the facility, because you can see about a third of our vehicles parked outside. The ones that are parked inside, it's like a Tetris game in there to, try to get these vehicles to actually get in. It makes it pretty inefficient for, especially when we have emergencies, which do happen in municipal services, to be able to get to the equipment that we need to efficiently to be able to address those. And this has really happened mainly because of rapid growth in our community. So we've had a significant number of mileage of new streets in the community, new utilities that have been put in, and really the things that those guys do on a day-to-day basis to maintain those. And they need new equipment to address those new developments. The library is the third one. There's no question, at least from my perspective, as we've been out talking to the community, the library is the one that people want the most. That's the one that I've definitely heard people say, don't forget the library. One thing about the library, and the reason we're putting it number 3, is we really can't forget about the library if we want to deal with City Hall. Because originally when this building was built in 1987, it was intended to last up until about 2020. And the thought behind it is to build our initial library within the City Hall facility, and then as our City Hall needs expanded, or the needs for services expanded, that the library would move out, and that we would just recapture that space to be able to keep our general city services in here. And that's exactly what can happen. I mean, I think one of the great things about the plan that Leroy Daley put together is we're able to accommodate everything on land that we already own. And for facilities like City Hall, we don't need to add on to this facility. We need to remodel it, and we need to recapture the space of the library and the police department to meet our space needs. Because right now, most of our conference room needs are met in this room. We pull out the card tables there in the back, for development meetings, and it's just, we don't have this. We had to move IT out of the facility, and they're in the fire station now. So we just don't have that space in here, but we will have that space if the library and the police station move. So we put the library third because to do City Hall right, we need to really wait until those things are out.
So like, going back there, like, if this all gets approved and we can move forward, and if we start on a public safety facility, can we also start, like, as far as like moving the power line and stuff like that, stuff that takes a long time, so we can do that stuff?
We can. I mean, some of the limitations we're gonna have is just dollars. But with that being said, that it would make sense for us to do that right away. Because that takes some time to go through the process with Excel to get that done. And by the time we actually would get through that process is about the time that we'd actually meet that need.
Okay, because I just know that's a big deal to have to do that.
The other thing that you'd likely see too, because, and I'll go through sort of the timing of this is, we're talking about, the start of this program now, but if we start this program now, we won't have the money nor the capacity to be able to get all these facilities done until 2029 is going to be when the City Hall is completed. So, I mean, we're only in 2022 right now. So, so there's going to be some time period in between now and when we finish that, like, say, when the police station moves out of City Hall, we're probably gonna move some of the services we have down into the police station temporarily. So we wouldn't go out and buy cubes or things like that, but we'd sort of spread the services so that we could use that space, recapture some conference room space. So it'd be sort of temporary moves that we'd move people to be able to deal with those immediate space needs, but maybe not necessarily the remodel until we get to that point.
I mean, that all makes perfect sense. It's just that, you know, I know some of these take a lot of, it's just complex in what we're doing, and it'd be nice to stay ahead of the curve. And a lot of it's about getting the plans in place.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of time in itself, and, you know, we might be, say, we could be building the public safety, but we could be working on the plans for everything else, you know.
Well, and that's what you'll sort of see as we go through this, is somebody used the term last time, which I thought was really good, daisy chaining it. I don't know. One of you two used the term. Okay. So now okay, the mayor pro tem used that. He used the term daisy chain.
Thanks.
All right. She got upset because I thought Michaela was running the meeting tonight.
Wonder where she could have got that idea.
It's just because I was really good at it.
I didn't let him know that it wasn't. I forgot to do that.
Oops.
He was busy today.
So, yeah, so we would plan on sort of daisy chaining these so that we would get the designs done at one, and then while we're starting the building the next one, then we would start the actual design of the next. And part of that is, you know, we think just like with the planning process that we did, we really think we need to have a construction manager that's gonna be here through the entire term of these improvements, and for multiple reasons. First of all, to sort of keep us going, be able to coordinate the activities with the architects, but also, you know, one of the things we want to accomplish through this program, especially with the new building maintenance department, is, you know, there's going to be different architects that need to work on each of these facilities because they're all going to focus in different areas. But there's some components of buildings that are just like HVAC. You know, the HVAC in one building is not a whole lot different than the HVAC in another building. We need to get to some consistency between our facilities of what type of HVAC units we have, what type of, you know, utilities we have, you know, down to what type of toilet paper dispensers do we have. Because right now, it's different in every facility.
So uniformity brings
Uniformity brings
consistency and cost benefits.
Yes, if we have a system that we feel comfortable with in HVAC, that we, you know, develop a relationship with somebody that can be able to help take care of the major things in each of our buildings, that, you know, when we're ordering supplies for buildings, that we're ordering one type of thing instead of having to order 20 different types of things.
Right.
I mean, if you were to talk to the building maintenance department now, I am certain that would be one of their frustrations, is everything is different in every facility that we have. And so we need somebody that's going to, even though we have different architects that really need to focus on those specialties of the things that we have in the facilities. There's some things that don't need to be specialized, and they should be uniform. And so, so that'll be part of this process as well.
So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying a construction manager, you're saying, is that not us, or that's just like an outside entity that's
It's an
gonna be
outside
brought on?
entity that basically, it also gives us some flexibility of how we actually do the projects. So sometimes, you know, you can go to more of a design build, or this is getting in more of his world, but you can use different types of bidding processes to be able to get the best cost benefit out of things, having a construction manager compared to just having a general architect go out and do a straight bid. So there's potential cost savings for having a construction manager on. Even though you have to pay for their services, they bring some of those abilities to do some different techniques that can save you money, both in the short term constructing, but also in the long term for continuity.
Yep.
And they act like they act like a point person, I would assume, and stuff. as well.
Yep.
That is nice. I know that it's not exactly the same, but I think of with all the downtown reconstruction, and I think his name is Brad. It's like all the residents are always, that's one thing I hear, like Brad's been amazing. He keeps us so, and I've even dealt with him since one of my houses was in that. And he was great. So I think of it that way, like how nice it was to have a point person. I know the residents have liked that. So I would assume, just having that one person even for continuity through the whole thing does sound like a huge benefit.
Yeah, we actually did that through the COVID dollars when we did those COVID improvements. And it was actually RJM that we had through that. We had a great experience with them. I mean, if you remember, we had to get those dollars spent by like within 3 months, and which was a very difficult task, but having that one person there as continuity makes a big difference.
Yep, and we did something similar when we did the remodel of the Southwest Transit bus garage too. We hired effectively a construction manager from Big D Construction, and they acted on wrath, and so that allowed us as Southwest Transit to be the general contractor, which saved us some money in terms of having to pay another contractor, and then also to be able to manage on our behalf.
Yes.
So
in essence, then if you have a construction manager, instead of paying the general to just overlook subs, you can overlook the subs through the use of the construction manager.
Right. And that's
He's watching our dollars closer also versus just the general contractor, because they're just trying to get the project done, and an overrun's an overrun, or a mistake, and they just do it, where the project manager can really catch things maybe beforehand, and because they're working, like I said, they're working more for us than themselves.
Yeah, that is really nice.
Exactly. I think the experience we had was like really positive. Saved us quite a bit of money, as well as doing some innovative things that helped us to bring in some additional amenities for no cost, or less cost than the total overall project was. So it was worked out great.
Yeah.
But they also do different scopes of bids. You might get 13 or 15 scope of bids, and that's just on different things. And then he goes through and makes sure that we're meeting everything with those scopes versus saying the whole project is 42 million. Now you know what every project, the plumbing is, and the electrical is, and the furnishings, and all of that. You go through it. It's all done separately in saving money. So.
Well, as far as the expected timeline, again, we talk about it starting next year, but this is a multi-year process. So to complete all this, not only from bringing on the financial aspects over 4 years, but just the logistics of it. So in 2023, we would plan on designing the public safety facility and completing the planning process for that. So that's the city planning process. 2024, complete the bidding to choose a contractor for the public safety, with construction starting in the spring. And we anticipate about an 18-month construction. And we'd also use 2024 to design the MSB facility expansion and complete the planning process. 2025, we would complete the bidding and choose a contractor for the MSB, with construction starting in the spring. We expect about a 14-month construction. We'd also use 2025 to design the library facility and complete the planning process. 2026 would be completing the bidding to choose a contractor for the library. That's about an 18-month construction process. And then also in 2026, design the city hall remodel. 2027, we choose a contractor for that. So that's about 12 months. So it's at 2028 to 2029 when you'd expect. And this sort of what you have here, fall of 2025, Public Safety Center, MSB late summer of 2026, library fall of 2027, and City Hall early summer of 2028. So again, even though we'd start funding the program if this was approved in 2023, this would take us 5 years to complete all of the facilities. I think we talked about that stuff. The estimated cost of all these projects is not an inexpensive project. It's about $115 million for all of our facilities, which would have a total annual tax levy debt of $4.5 million, utility debt of about $1.6 million, so a total annual debt service of 6.1 million is what we're estimating now. So here's what the impact, and this is the exact chart that we shared with the public at each of the park parties and different ways we engage the public on. So basically, we'd look at implementing a component of that each year over 4 years. So it would take $1.125 million in tax levy each of 23, 24, 25, and 26. The impact to a $370,700 building or house, which is the median value house now, would be $8 per month for 2023, an additional $9 per month in 2024, additional $8 per month in 2025, and an additional $9 per month in 2026. So at the end, it would be an additional $34 per month to be able to fund that. Now, we look at this as being sort of, we tried to present what we consider to be realistic and not overly aggressive. This is based on the assumption that we'd see about a 5% increase in market values. As I shared with you before, we've actually seen more than that in the community, and we expect that we will probably see more, especially with the development that's on the table. But we sort of want to give people, I guess we want to give a more conservative estimate to people as we're looking at this.
Well, let's maybe just take a couple minutes that, we had talked about it earlier that, if we're gonna take on a project of this magnitude, this is the ideal time because we're in such a growth period. And we've got industrial growth, we've got housing growth, and these numbers will be impacted correctly. I mean, it can be impacted.
Yeah.
Down the line as that growth continues to happen, and things like that. I want to, because sometimes that gets lost in this process, that we don't have an opportunity to talk about that. I want to just make sure that.
And by impacted, just to be clear too, like, those numbers go down per month.
Yes, it would,
Yeah.
the idea would be
Yep.
based on what's happening here, the numbers could go down.
Yes.
And we're being right up front, this is the actual cost.
Yeah, and the way I always say it to people is, I would expect these numbers to be impacted positively, but I'm certainly not going to put it out there that I think it's a certainty.
Right.
Because we have no idea what's going to happen to the market over the next 4 years. It could be much better than we expect. It could be much worse than we expect. But I would also suggest that, not unlike the staffing study program, if we saw something that was a major impact like COVID again, you might say, well, maybe we need to take a year off of this program.
But we have the ability.
We have the ability to do that.
We're not starting 4 projects all at once.
Yes, and so, there's stuff that you'd have to do to meet the debt service for the projects you've already started. But if you hadn't started a project yet, you would always have the ability to say, man, this is the wrong time to be doing this. Let's wait a year, to catch up with things until we get to a certain point. Now, when we first start out, unfortunately, the public safety facility is the most expensive one. So, you might have to go in and say that there might be some debts, there might be some debt levy needs that we'd need to do the following year, but maybe you wouldn't implement the entire program. That does, by dividing this into 4 years, it allows us to, and separating the actual construction of the facilities and not starting until we actually get those dollars in place, allows us some flexibility that if you did have something major happen, that you could say, okay, we still need to continue forward with this, but maybe this isn't the year.
So basically, because we've got, effectively 4 projects, it gives us like 4 years to stagger those. But once we hit that 4th year, once the last project is, we lock into that and begin the project, then we're pretty much locked in, because now we have the obligations we have to repay.
Yeah, but theoretically, we'd have all the dollars levied too.
Sure.
So we wouldn't start that last project until, we have that last year funded.
Right.
Yeah. Just, one of the things I think is important to point out is some of the community engagement processes we've done over the last several months, and we're going to continue to do these as we move into the future. I know the mayor has a presentation to the Lions, I think it is next week, and there's a there's a presentation to the Rotary coming up.
Well, I know it's coming, but I don't know when.
So there's, well, surprise.
Just make the mayor pro tem do it.
Yeah. You don't want to be the mayor pro tem anymore, do you?
Which one is pro tem?
Quit that one.
So, but we're going to continue to do these over the fall months too, but some of the stuff that we've done up to this point, we did start with the initial sounding board group of residents that met in the late winter months to get a tour and provide feedback and the overall need for the program. We've developed a page on our website dedicated to the information on this program. Included in that is we're recording this presentation now, so we'll put that out there so that people can be able to watch this afterwards and be able to, see the presentation and hear it at the same time too. We've developed videos to put on our webpage and social media explaining different components of the plan. We've developed brochures to provide the public. We've participated in multiple community events with information booths, so Fire and Ice, River City Days, the Lime Senior Picnic, Touch a Truck. We sent informational postcards and invitations to every resident in the community, inviting them to our open house. And then if they weren't able to come to the open house, it directed them towards our webpage, talking about the programs, or this program itself.
Have we been getting any comments through that? You, Kevin?
Man behind the wall.
Kevin, have we been getting?
No, we have not.
Okay.
There you go. The park parties that we had that were advertised in those, we had 4 of those, so 1 for each ward. Like I said, we're taping our budget work sessions and our building projects overall budget to provide a presentation to the residents on the webpage, so that sometimes I think it's a lot easier for people to not only see a presentation, but sort of hear the presentation that's going with it, so they can hear some of the questions that are being asked and things like that. And then just general discussions around the community, at least from my perspective. I try to make a point if I'm talking to somebody about, about the program and some of the stuff that we're looking at. And I think it's just going to be those types of discussions that, we continue to need to have. So that's our building program, and just some of the specifics of that. Other items to note in the budget for 2023, we do have a fire department pumper, number 3. It's $1 million. We're in essence just moving that up by 2 years from where it was in the schedule. And actually, because of the way our replacement schedule works, other than moving it up in the schedule, we don't really see the impact of this until 2042, because in essence, we'd keep our old trucks. Up until this point, we've sold our old trucks, we'd keep them, and now we'd spread the schedule. So we'd have 3 tiers of trucks. So we'd have one that's a first line, one that's a second line, and one that's a third line. And they'd have 8 years apiece on each of those. And the reason we're suggesting that is because we found that we've had at least one major truck down 25% of the time, which only leaves us with 2 major pieces of apparatus. So that's
Tonight, you're short one again tonight. Unfortunately, it was kind of scary. It blew a tire.
Ooh.
Ladder truck blew a tire right when it pulled back into the station, and I mean, it just echoed through the building. Luckily, it blew out the other way.
Oh, jeez.
But then it knocked all the airlines out, so the truck was dead in water right there. So the mechanics are coming in right now.
And I mean, it happens. I mean, these pieces of equipment, I mean, there's a lot of weight on those apparatus and stuff. So I like the thought of what's being talked about here, and in essence, just, we keep our trucks on longer, but we're able to keep them on longer because we divide them into different levels of response. We have the addition of a drone in here for $10,000. This would be used for both of our utility and public safety services, but also marketing efforts. We have additional $10,000 towards internal diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and training. We have a tactical robot for police use for $4,000. I talked about this at the last meeting, that this is really meant to try to protect officers and people who are barricaded in the property from not just sending people in right away, but being able to send something in to assess the situation before people were to go in, to try to really not create situations that cause dangerous issues.
Yeah, we had talked about, at the last time that we did a presentation about pilots for that, for the drone.
Yeah.
Are there gonna be some utility people trained in that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. This is one thing that is becoming more and more evident, which is really sad, but, so we've had to increase our professional tree control services by 40,000. This is really because of the significant rise in the emerald ash borer. It's getting really pretty prevalent around the community. You know, the City Hall Plaza out here has a number of trees that are already stricken, and it's going to continue to happen through the community. And really, the issue for us is not just it doesn't look good to look at dead trees, but they also become hazard trees too. And we need to make sure that we take those down before they become hazards.
Is that the only way of treating emerald ash borer?
No, we have been treating it in City Square Park with an actual treatment. And the reason we've been doing it there is it's not cheap, and we've tried to target it towards those areas that
You want the mature trees to stay.
that we want mature trees to be there.
Sure.
So the thing with the treatment is you can't miss a year. You have to do it every year, and if you miss a year, you know, they can get the bug in them. So we've sort of focused on those areas where we want to make sure there's mature trees. It's maybe been a little bit easier in City Hall Plaza, thinking that we're probably going to be redoing that anyway. You know, with limited resources, we try to keep it to those areas where mature trees are probably more important. We talked about this with public engagement efforts, so increasing our advertising for printing costs and advertising to get out flyers and postcards for public engagement efforts. Our fencing consortium, we have $4,200 added towards that, and that's to basically partner with other communities so that we have access, if there was to be a major public safety event, to a fence that we could secure our City Hall facility. Replacement of 8 rifles within the police department to create more, take out of service ones that are probably too old and should be out of service, but also create some consistency between our equipment. Protective equipment for mobile field force officers, so we have the need to outfit 12 officers to be able to protect them in any type of civil unrest or mass demonstrations, so that we have the right type of equipment. So when we get to the tax levy impact of this, so again, our median value house in the community for taxes payable 2023 is $370,700. That's up from $298,500 for this tax year. The actual city taxes on the example last year were $959. That same house would be at $1,158, so an annual increase of $199 or $16.50 per month. So basically, again, it's the baseline operational levy growth would be $4.50 per month. The staffing study level growth would be at an additional $4 per month, and the building improvement levy growth would be an additional $8 per month. So that's where you come up with that $16.50 per month. This sort of looks at the funding of the facilities and sort of our baseline growth over the 4-year period. So looking at where a house would go from 2022 to 2026. So that's not just with the building program. It's also assuming growth in our baseline services as well. And then this shows where we would fall in the grand scheme of overall tax levy impact within the metro area, we'd be number 56 out of 84. So we'd be the 56th lowest out of 84 cities in the metro area. We'd move from 78th to 56th lowest, but that assumes that all other cities have 0% increase. If we assumed all other cities had a 5% increase, which, you know, as I've talked to other cities, it's been pretty clear that it's probably more than 5%. We would rank 64th out of 84 cities, which is in the bottom 24% of cities. And I guess the other thing I'll point out in this chart here too is I include our total levy. So this includes our general fund, our EDA, our tax abatement, our cemetery fund, and our equipment acquisition fund. Basically, we include any fund that could have a tax impact on somebody. Some of these numbers may only be reflective of general fund levies that are out there.
You're talking about other communities?
Other communities.
Okay.
So it's not always a complete apples-to-apples comparison. As I mentioned before, our tax rate under this scenario would go down from 32.133% to 31.592%. It should actually say a decrease of 1.5%, not 1.7%. We'd be in the bottom 33% of cities for tax levy per capita. And if we extrapolate over and this is really difficult because you have no idea what other cities are going to do, but if you use sort of that 5% per year, plus or minus for other cities, basically at the end of this building program, we'd be about right smack dab in the center. But I think the important thing to point out is that we're still going to see growth for another 10 years at least after that happens. And so I sort of see this as sort of the peak, and then our growth will be able to bring that back down again. So, you know, there's a benefit. I know the mayor mentioned it before. This is not a program you'd want to have to undertake if you were seeing no growth in the community, because that means that all of that impact would go on existing residents. You know, it's not fun to have to deal with these types of programs, but you know, they are important to keep up with. And if you were going to do it, doing it during a time of tax levy or tax value growth is probably the best time that you could do it. So that's just, again, I just want people to have, I don't want people to be blindsided by the impacts of it. I think it's better that we're out there just sort of talking about what to expect during this program.
And I'd like to just kind of talk a little bit, there's been some stuff floating out there about that. There hasn't been conversations about this, and that it's rather quick that we're jumping to it, but we have had conversations for years about this, and some of these items have been on, talking about for 8-10 years already, about how, you know, about when to do it, and because of the complexities of what we have in this with, you know, we can't do anything until the police and the library move out, but you gotta get them built first, and there's just a lot of pieces and parts to this, and I think it's important to know that, you know, we've looked at multiple different ways. We looked at stretching this out over a longer period of time. You guys were all sitting up here. We weren't saving anything, and the fear was it's gonna cost us more the longer we wait. And these aren't things we think that we want. These are really of needs. Our buildings are, I still open the invitation if anybody wants to come and tour our facilities. If I can't do it, somebody will get somebody to tour, give you that ability to come and look at the facilities. The facilities are definitely outdated. We have, you know, it's obvious the police are in too small of a building. The fire needs a major remodel due to all of the current issues with the carcinogens and their equipment and all that stuff that they're dealing with, so they need a major remodel. The public works facility, you know, we're storing, like Matt said, a third of our equipment outside,
in today's days of computers and hydraulics, that's just not good for them in our climate. So, like I'm with Matt, this is not easy to take on a task like this, but at some point we had to do it, and, you know, we've talked about it for a long time, and I just think, you know, we've looked at it, and I think this is, I can't say it's the easiest way, but I think it's the best way for us to move forward and to be able to complete these projects. But then, once these projects are complete, that really, and if I still understand it right, these projects will take us into the future where we'll still be okay in our build time.
Yeah, I think they do two things. Is first of all, and I know this was something that I think especially Councilmember Hatfield said, don't design this, make sure you design this so that it takes care of our ultimate needs.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's doing two things, is we're dealing with where we need to be for our ultimate needs, but we also then, you know, one of the challenges in this program is we haven't really had a funding source to go back to. And so this also provides a future council, you know, 20, 25 years down the road when we need to make major renovations into facilities again. You know, it may not be that we have to add on to facilities, but we're certainly going to, I mean, we're here forever. We have to plan to be here forever. And so how do we make sure that people in the future have those resources to be able to reinvest back in these facilities so that we can continue to have good quality facilities even after we're fully grown? Because you know, we've talked about these issues are a lot easier to deal with when you're growing than when you're not growing. The next time that somebody has to deal with these facilities, we will not be in a growth mode. To me, this is part of us planning for when we're fully developed.
Yeah, I would just comment too that, you know, you talk about if you stretch it out, it actually could cost more. And, you know, some of that conversation was just like goods and materials or everything like, but there's also the cost of staffing and turnover, because, you know, you're hiring people. We invested in this staffing study, but turnover occurs when you're trying to hire, and recruitment costs, and you're walking them through dated buildings, and there's a cost there that's not $1 that you can always put a figure on there, but it's an important cost. You talk about, you know, I just had a conversation with a couple of people that, you know, didn't necessarily realize that you could live in Chaska and work on other fire departments, right? And so like the attraction of other fire departments in the area, but ideally it's nice if your fire department lives here, type thing. And so those are the things that are conversations that occur and people don't necessarily realize. And I just, like I said, I just want to point out there is not an easy dollar to put on turnover, but it matters. I mean, you're attracting talent and you're walking them through dated buildings.
It's not even dated buildings, it's like, you know, the equipment and functionality of
Yeah.
their workspace in order for them to do their job most effectively. I think that's a thing that you can put $1 on, probably just workplace efficiency and making sure that that the staff has all the tools, you know, at their disposal in order to do their job most effectively. And if we're spending, you know, minutes and hours moving trucks in and out of the garages just to do tasks, I mean, that's taking that person away from another task at hand.
And also impacting our quality of service for our residents.
Yeah, especially if you have like a water main break or something that's, you know, more of an emergency situation and you're having to move out vehicles to get to a particular piece of equipment, minutes matter. So,
I joke about this, but when Ryan was interviewing for the position, I didn't even want to take him on a tour of the police station because I thought he might say no.
I mean, that's valid though, because you think
Yeah.
about our initiatives around diversity and things. If you're a woman walking into our fire station or police department, you wouldn't want to work there. You would
Right.
say, there's not even a locker for me. Why? They obviously don't want me here, which is absolutely not true, but, and is no fault of the police department. That's just a part of, we need to get that. So I think even just surrounding that and the initiatives for those pieces, making it a place people want to work too, so.
yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the simple fact of the matter that when these facilities were each built, Chaska was at a population of whatever size, right? And each of the facilities were built with the impact of growth, but we have expanded and we've gone and stretched beyond the timeline of which every building was met as far as, capacity at such and such point. And we've gone and they've been, staff have been ingenious enough to make the buildings work most effectively in order to do their day-to-day functions, whether it be the police station using their break room as a material
lab.
processing lab, or one of the old holding cells as a file cabinet storage facility now, and things of that nature, is, municipal service building where they put their lockers and things of that nature. So I think all the facilities have really done, and all the staff have really done their best effort to get us to this point, and now it's imploring not only us as a council, but us as a community to take pride in the facilities that we have and reinvest back into it, because we are a growing community, and we have to look forward to that growth in order to build facilities that meet that need so that we can have the best small town in Minnesota.
And the big context of, what you just said, when we built this building in 1987, right?
Yep.
If you look at the 1990 census put us at, 11.3 thousand people, right? So we're almost, so that's a few thousand, probably a couple thousand less in 1987. So you're looking at almost like 3 times the size now. And, this building served us really well for all those years. But, we need to, and we're going to continue growing for some time. So we need to, build those facilities which are going to last us for that next generation. So it's time.
Well, the schedule for this year would be, so we're considering the adoption of the maximum tax levy and preliminary budget. We also have the EDA maximum levy that we also have to consider tonight. But everything that you've seen in here and for impacts includes the EDA in there. So it's all inclusive in that. We need to establish it by September 30th, so that's why we're taking that up today. In October through November, we'll be reviewing the enterprise fund budgets. December 5th would be our annual truth and taxation hearing, so that's when we make the final presentation of the budget. We don't make a decision on that night, but it's the public hearing that is advertised to people on their truth and taxation statements. And then December 19th would be when we'd have to adopt our final 2023 budget and then establish our final tax levy. Questions?
What kind of impact are we thinking possibly the community center can have with that task force going? And do we have any idea, or is it too early?
It's too early, and honestly, I see different sources of funding to support that.
So there's really, I just had that question asked, well, you're in a community center, and I just wanted to make sure that I understand, because I was thinking that as well, because that's a enterprise fund.
Yeah.
But I want to be clear that I've got the right message.
Yeah, there is some question with the community center in that we have some of our, what would be considered in other cities, general park and rec services that are included within our community center, which should be included in our general fund, but we've been sort of taking a stab at trying to pull every year something more out of, that should be in the general fund instead of the community center fund, out so that we have the proper positions that are in there. But that's going to be a discussion of the task force is, how do we make this sustainable? I do think it ends up being different types of sources of funding. The reason these are focused on here as a building a program is because these are our general fund services. The only source of income that we have to support these, I shouldn't say it completely. There is, we've seen out of the 6.1 million, almost $2 million as enterprise fund per year. But that's some of the efficiencies we've had of having like our electric and water and sewer department in with our public works department, is that we've shared some of those facilities. But in general, these are our general fund services that are tax levy supported, and that's why we focused on them sort of separately.
Can't charge admission fee to come into City Hall.
No. That's sort of what it boils down to. Yeah.
Is there still opportunities for us to look at like state funding, like we we've seen in some places, and I know that you and
Yep.
I have talked about that a little bit, but
So, there's been some police stations that have been paid for through bonding dollars in the state. I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I don't
but-
get it. It seems like that should be a community's responsibility, but it has happened. There's been some library facilities that have been included in, with some state grant funding or even some bonding dollars. I don't get it, but it's happened. And so just because we do this doesn't mean that it's gonna preclude us from looking at those other sources of funds to be able to support it. To me, that's one of also the advantages of having sort of a four-year program.
Right.
Is it gives us some ability to say, okay, we have a few legislative sessions we can go through here. Where we can, sort of address some of these needs. We have some grant cycles to go through. And so to me, all those will do is help reduce the overall impact of the program as we go through.
They've been talking more about the congressional spending, missing a word in there. Basically, the earmarks.
With the infrastructure bill?
Congressionally directed spending.
Oh, yeah.
That, I mean, because there's been some stuff in those that have gone toward buildings too, so.
Yeah.
It's just that stuff, gotta stay on top of.
Yeah,
There's so
and
much out there.
To
'Cause I'm with
me-
you, I don't get it.
To me, they're sort of head scratchers, because to me, those should be, if our city is benefiting from a police station, it shouldn't be everybody else that's paying for it. But if they're gonna, if they're giving it out to somebody, it's something we should stay on top of, and we will.
Chisholm got 25 million.
Yeah.
Give us 5, we'd be probably thrilled.
I think, Ryan, wasn't City of Crystal's Police Department, wasn't that a good portion of that covered through the bonding bill?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's happened, there's no doubt.
Well, as long as we're looking at that, I think
Yeah.
that's important.
Put our lobby jackets on, huh?
Yeah. So, what you would be, I'll stop sharing this. What you would be looking at for tonight is, the adoption of Resolution 2022-112, which would be adopting the proposed assessed 2022 payable 2023 maximum property tax levy. And in that resolution that Noel put together also has our preliminary budget numbers as well, which between our general fund, EDA, cemetery, and abatement funds, we estimate it will be $29,890,348. And it's a total tax levy of $15,216,147. Any questions?
Questions for Matt? And while Matt was doing his presentation, I am back at the meeting, so thank you, Pro Tem Hubbard, for running till I got back. I was at swearing in of new firefighters at the fire station tonight, so was honored to be able to do that, so I'm back with it here now, so. All right, any other questions for Matt? Otherwise, I'd be looking for our thoughts or motion.
I'll just comment that we've said it, we'll say it again. We've seen this a lot, right? Like the lack of questions, the head nods. Don't understate the importance and value that we've put into, don't underestimate the importance and value, right? We've looked at a lot, and I appreciate that. I think the time that I've been on part of the cycle now, the 4th time, I have appreciated the approach we've taken with work sessions, which remind the public, are open to the public and welcome to attend. Because for me, it's just always helped to piecemeal a little bit, because you digest it, you think about it, you come back with questions, you learn more. And then even like this, like I said, none of that was new for anyone up here, but it's good hearing it again, because it spurs some questions that maybe you didn't have before. You want to
Checking over my notes.
checking, verifying your notes. So I think it's just important to say, because again, if someone, we're recording this and they're like, they didn't ask a single thing, and they're, raising this thing. It's like, we've had a lot of questions, and I think a lot of us have expressed our appreciation that it's not easy to increase bills for people and taxes and all that, and, but understand the importance of maintaining a pride in your city when it comes to some of these buildings and facilities and staffing and all those types of things too. So just wanted to say that again and remind everyone.
And I think your comment about pride is very important, but we're to the point where we have to.
Yeah.
We just don't
It's
have
more an
the space.
embarrassment,
We
right?
don't-
It's your-
Yes.
it's not a
Or
pride, right?
we're gonna get caught in a mistake that's gonna cost us through, unfortunately, a lawsuit or something, and now that's money not well spent, ever. And, so we have gotten to some of those points where we have to make these changes, and it goes back to what's been set up here, recruiting, everything about it. We're at that point that our buildings are 30 years ago, and we're not 30 years ago anymore today, and it's different, it's a different world today, so. Anyone else comment? Well, I would look for someone to either make a motion of approval of the 2022-112, approving a proposed assessed 2022 payable 2023, and this is again maximum tax levy. So what we adopt tonight is the maximum, cannot ever go up from this, in this year's cycle. Can go down, but it cannot be raised any higher, so.
So moved.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Hubbard,
I'll second it.
second by Councilmember Wong. Again, this is motion to adopt resolution 2022-112, adopting the proposed assessed 2022 payable 2023 maximum property tax levy. Discussion. I just want to say, I think Councilmember Gross summed it up well, about, we have seen this, we might not be asking questions, but we've seen this, and we've asked a lot of questions through the process, and we know that this is a big step for us, but it's something that's not going away, and it's not getting cheaper and not getting easier, and it's something that we are at a necessity on some of these, and most of these facilities at this point, so. Okay, last call. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Just done there, moves us on to item number 9, bills. Anyone have a comment, question, concern regarding a bill?
I have 3 quick questions. Page 1, there's an item for ABDO, Ike and Myers LLP. August finance temp, what was that?
Yeah, so we have a temporary person that we've needed to bring in to help with payroll as we go through changes that we've had to make with how we actually do overtime for public safety officials. There's changes that we need to make to that that's pretty labor intensive, that we need somebody temporarily to help us out with that until we get caught up.
Okay.
So our payroll clerk can actually run the payroll while they're getting that completed.
So why were there changes?
Because the way we were doing it before wasn't correct. And so we have to go back and we have to look back over, and it's not a major financial impact, but we need to go back for, I think it's 2 years, to be able to look at how it impacted each of the officers, and then be able to go back and make that correction.
So it's like a compliance or audit type of thing?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a way, there's different, it's very complicated. There's different ways that public safety officials, like if somebody was an hourly employee and they worked 44 hours a week, they'd get 4 hours of overtime.
Okay.
It doesn't work that way with public safety officials. There's actually additional hours that they can actually work without getting overtime because they look at it over a longer period of time.
21-day period.
A 21-day period instead of.
56-hour work week.
Yep. Yeah, so so you look at how overtime works in a public safety position differently than you do for a general employee. And so, so we need to go back and we need to make sure that each one of the officers, that there wasn't issues with the way that it was actually processed.
So this has potential implications in terms of for both, legally the way we're doing it, as well as from a compensation based on contracts and stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep, and so we did in the last contract, we changed the way that we did it to make it compliant with the way that we're supposed to do it.
Good.
But now we change it, we have to go back a certain amount of time because there's a retro period that you have to look back at.
Right, and so this is basically going back to the required retroactive period and making sure that it's in compliance with that agreement.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
So we're
And it's just, we need a temp person to do it because it's just too much we have one payroll person to try to run payroll and go back and do the
right, because
compliance.
they're consumed doing payroll, so then you need the capacity to go back and actually do the retroactive stuff.
Yep.
Which will take a while because they have to basically start from 2 years ago or whatever that is and start
Yes.
rolling forward. Got
Yep.
it. All right. Well, that was an interesting one. Page 13, there's an item for Keys Well Drilling Company, and I saw there's a couple of test wells, and I remember that not so long ago there was a test well drilled over behind where Cove is. That was where the future water treatment plant would be. Is this related to that, or is
Yeah,
this
it's the final payment for those.
Okay, it's final payment for that.
Yep.
Okay. And then on page 19, there's one for Redbeard LLC that had some other things related. It looks like a golfing league or something. Is this just a pass-through?
Yeah, so Redbeard is Oak 19, so it's a
Okay.
restaurant out at the town course. So when people sign up for leagues, they also pay for an end-of-the-year banquet and prizes. And so we do that through Oak 19. And so it's basically the league fees that they pay for through that for the end-of-the-year banquet.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's all it is. Okay, that's all I got.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield. Discussion? Hearing none, Elise?
Councilmember Hatfield?
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard?
Yes.
Councilmember Wong?
Aye.
Councilmember Graf?
Aye.
Mayor Winchell?
Yes.
That was a sly yes.
Moves us to 10, other business. Councilmember Hatfield.
Oh, I'm gonna be first.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened in, let me check my tally. Just kidding. Let's see, did I do anything recently? Lots of things. Food distribution this Thursday at 12 at, on Stoughton, the normal place. And on the 27th, I think it's the fire department and the police department together are doing a car seat clinic. Maybe it's just the fire department. On the 27th. And then also, are we calling it the Latin Music and Food Fest this
Yes.
year?
Yep, it is.
That's what we're calling it this year, okay. Is on Friday, I'm very excited for that. I heard there's gonna be a lot more food than last year, so you won't have to wait in really long lines.
Well, you guys approved a lot of licenses for
Yeah.
food tonight. so-
Right. And it was
Food
nice
and
to see a local, well, I think they're all kind of local, but a local restaurant establishment, participating, so that was nice. Patron,
I think La Hermosa as well, right?
Yep, La Hermosa, Patron.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Crooked
few.
Pint.
Crooked Pint. I knew about Crooked Pint, they're kind of just default, because they're there. And so, yeah, that's exciting. It was very fun last year, besides the long food lines. That's why I'm excited about the more food. So that'll be on Friday from 6 to 10, I believe, yes.
Oh, and there's fireworks at 8:30.
Yep.
I'm pretty excited. I've had to like miss the last couple fireworks for other things, and I'm like pumped to get to see one, so.
And apparently this is like real dance music, because I've had a couple of people come and say, "You're gonna dance, right?" And
Like, I
What they
don't
doing?
dance.
Salsa de
Sure
Soul
what-
Band.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be a real lively band.
I'm excited.
Mary Bella will get
I'm gonna
us.
wait for you to get out there and cut a rug.
I don't know.
Kevin, make sure you get that on video for all the social media outlets.
I think that is, I guess the only other thing I'll say is we had our city golf outing on Thursday night, and every time I get to hang out with staff, I just get a little jealous that I don't get to work at the city. So, because there's all such amazing staff, and they're so fun to be around and so smart, and just, I love our staff, and I will brag about them forever, so.
Do you know what, while we were driving, Councilmember Hatfield leans and says to me, do you think Matt would hire us? I said, no.
I did say that.
As a what?
As anything related to the
We
city.
can do whatever.
Well, we have a really difficult payroll situation with taxes.
I actually,
Yeah.
do, and I literally do payroll.
Yeah.
Perfect. Anyways, but yeah, I just wanted to brag about them again, and just how much I love being around our city staff. So I feel very lucky that they're all amazing. And that's all I have.
Councilmember McGraw.
Oh, you're really mixing up over here.
You think you figured it out?
It's good. I know, it keeps me on toes. It was just good to see turnout at the open house at the fire station tonight. I was able to go there. It's a little parent moment of my kids are getting less interested in stuff like that because they're getting older. But I still like it, so I don't know why they don't. But it's just good to see people get together. It's just one of those things where it amazes me, you come through what we did in the last 2 years of the pandemic, and you just continue to have that appreciation for events where people can get together, talk to each other, interact, spray a hose at a fake house with fire on it. My son was a little disappointed because I had to get him home here and we didn't get to see the sprinkler demonstration when they put the fire on, and then the Jaws of Life, which is always a highlight. So I appreciate that. Just a shout out to Eastern County School District. School started. Teachers, principals, administration staff, just all the efforts I put in to welcome kids back. And, I will say that it's a recognition for myself personally before my son, my youngest son, who's a second grader, with the realization that this is the closest thing he's had to a normal start to the school year in those 2 years, which is kind of weird, truthfully, to think about that. I don't think he thinks about that. I don't think he's just excited to be back and see his friends, but it is that realization of that, this is the normal for him, which, we'll continue to hope that continues to be the trend through the school year, but it was just kind of fun to see the excitement on kids' faces, see the people getting picked up, dropped off, the teachers, welcoming him back, and pretty tough 2 years for teachers and administrators too. So just a shout out to them. I'll just comment that I do have a greater appreciation for fall fireworks, because if you bring your kids there, it's not so late. So those are always nice. Dusk is a little earlier at night, even though we accept that summer's coming to an end. And that is all I have.
Councilmember Wong.
All right, I got a few things. I'll add on to what Councilmember Grau mentioned about the open house at the fire department. It was fantastic, and this, as always, and this was really well attended. Some of the things they had were they had a helicopter that landed there, that was a medevac helicopter that landed there. They had an ambulance that was open, as well as fire truck rides for kids and adults, as well as different demonstrations about using fire equipment, or even like a fire extinguisher practice simulator for kids that they could use. Even the little ones could give that a try. And we'll have educational exhibits there, and great way to get to know and see the folks who work at the fire department, and to see all the great things that they do there, and a lot of safety things that were just really fantastic for kids and for adults to learn about. So thank you to everyone for being there. And also the electric department was there also with light bulb giveaways, as well as police department with information for the cat guards, as well as other information that might be useful in different programs out there, such as the Paw Patrol and Neighborhood Watch. So great stuff out there. So thank you to everyone in the fire department and also those who joined in from police and electric as well. So also wanted to welcome kids back to school because now it's the beginning of the school year since our last meeting. So the school year's kind of kicked off last week and they should be done with their first full week of school as of last Friday. And so welcome back. And then there's also a rooftop movie night on Saturday, September 24th at the East Creek Southwest Transit Station, which will be something new, hosted by Park and Rec. And also the movie there will be Coco, and it includes free snacks, so that's something kind of fun for families and kids. Something new, and also the farmers markets that are also going on downtown at City Square Park through September 7th. So it's kind of it's the last one. So the last
already
one
happened.
just passed.
already
The last
done.
one just passed. Yep, sorry, the last one just passed. Like I should have scratched and put out. So that one's done. But outside of that, a couple updates. So Southwest Transit, I actually participated in the State Fair, kind of like State Fair program. So I actually went down to all the different transit stations, which are East Creek here in Chaska, the Village Station, or the one off of 212 and Chanhassen, as well as the Eden Prairie Station. And I worked loading people in buses in Eden Prairie, which was really kind of fun just to kind of get a little hands on there. And then in addition to that, I also got a chance to observe some of the operations down in the State Fair as well. And I have to say, just this is the team at Southwest Transit does such a fantastic job of keeping buses moving, keeping people moving, keeping customers happy. One of the things that was really of most note is that Southwest Transit is the only service down there that has a load and go service. That as soon as if there's a line of people that's trying to get on a bus, they'll load up the bus, and as soon as the bus is full, then they'll just start rolling, and then they'll just keep moving people, so that way that people aren't sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. Most of the other services have a scheduled service, so if the bus is going to leave at 6:30, bus will pull up, people will, if the bus is there, they'll get on the bus, and then the bus will wait there until 6:30, and then the bus will roll, and then whenever the next bus is scheduled, like 6:45, they gotta wait till 6:45 till the next bus rolls up. So the lines can get pretty backed up depending upon which service you're on. So this service, we've done a great job keeping people moving, and in fact, we've actually had, in this year, we had about 68,500 passengers move through in 8 days of the fair. That was Thursday through Sunday service, so that's 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. By comparison, in 2019, which was before the pandemic, we had 88,900 people ride. And so that was about 77% of the 2019 service. So overall, pretty good year, not amongst our best.
Is that because you guys didn't do the weekday and Labor Day
For
this year?
same time period.
Okay.
I think so. When we actually include Labor Day and weekday, it went to like 120 something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it was quite a bit more, yeah. But for the same time period, it was 88,000 versus 68,000.
Sure.
Yep. So overall, really good turnout and good to see that it was picking up. And I'm sure everyone had heard about, there was also the shooting at the State Fair. Southwest Transit said services were delayed about 15 to 30 minutes, not because of what they were doing, but because there's a transit way that the buses use to get into and out of the State Fair, and they had closed that transit way to all the bus services because of the public safety was using that to come in and out of the fair site. So basically all the buses were stopped from all the services, so no one could get in or out, and were kind of basically held there until they got all the operations taken care of, and then they started moving buses out again. That said, we had enough buses, loading operations went smoothly, and we got all of our passengers transported out safely. So wanted to commend all the State Fair ground staff, dispatch, and drivers from Southwest Transit who were able to keep everything moving during that crisis situation, and also for the great work they did all through the State Fair. Again, high feedback, or really positive feedback from the riders and from everyone who participated in it. Also, one last question is, so at the Southwest Transit Station last year, we had painted pickleball court markings there, and unfortunately, as we know, We had set up one of those boxes with the pickleball equipment, but then the whole box was like stolen. And it was one of those big metal like utility boxes. So the question is that, did we ever replace that, or was there a plan to kind of resurrect that, kind of given that, you know, there's still demand for pickleball is still picking up and, you know, everything's
I
painted,
thought it
but,
was, got it replaced.
yeah.
I gotta check. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I know.
I don't think it was, I think it was said that they were going to at some point when they could figure out a more secure
Secure, yeah.
way, so I don't think it has been done yet.
Yeah,
but
and that's where I was kind of wondering.
We
if,
could
like,
also just ask the thieves to stop thieving.
Yeah, well, that's a
Right.
whole
That
different
makes
story.
sense.
They probably were very disappointed when they got it home and found out that it was a lockbox full of pickleball equipment.
Yeah, so there's like a whole bunch of thieves hawking like pickleball equipment.
I was
in
gonna
there
say, how
anyway.
much does it go?
If you're getting a lockbox, you're expecting you're getting a little bit more than that.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I was just kind of wondering if we're, you know, if they kind of got, you know, if they, you know, made any progress in like coming up with a different
I'll
solution
check
or
into
something
that.
like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's all I've got, so, yep.
All right, Elise?
Ouch.
Wait, the Chaska
Oh,
Town
I
Course
missed
on
you,
Friday.
sorry. Oh, wait, stop.
What?
I'm sorry, I missed you.
You did that on purpose, didn't you?
No, I did, I'm sorry,
See, you bounced around and you messed your own.
yeah, I screwed up with myself.
It's okay. I have 0 reports, so everything that's been said's been
All that,
said.
and you don't have nothing to say?
Well, I've got to call you out on it. You
Yeah,
skipped
you-
over
and
me.
you did.
What,
And
am I
you did.
invisible?
No.
That's it, you're done?
I don't have anything else to say.
Jake?
Played the Chaska Town Course Friday. It is incredible. But you guys already knew that. Just thought I'd pass that along.
So you had to play after we all divided all up. Divided?
What'd you, what?
No, the course looked great, and it was part of the Chaska Cares
What day
event,
was
so
he
I was
there?
really happy to be there.
Friday.
But that
Literally
course is
after us.
absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
Did you?
We actually got
The
really lucky in that
front
Chaska
nine?
Cares event, because when I looked at the weather the night before, it sort of looked like 9 o'clock in the morning it was gonna start raining. I
Well,
don't
that
think
was
it
Fri-
really started drizzling till maybe 4 o'clock, 3:30.
Yeah, that was Friday, yeah,
Yeah.
just before the game.
Yeah, so it worked out perfect. So that was actually, we had a full tee sheet that day, had a lot of sponsors for the events, and that goes to the Miracle League field. So it was a good event. Thanks for playing.
Thanks for putting it on.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Matt?
Just a reminder that we have a meeting a week from today, September 19th, and then we don't have another one again until October 2nd.
I got it.
Third.
I got it all laid out here.
Yeah, so,
You steal my thunder, I won't have nothing to say now.
okay.
Good.
Wow. Ouch. Noel, do you have anything? All right. All right, a few things. Happy retirement to Tom Forner. I heard that he retired Friday. So, congratulations to Tom. Tom has worked, he was, animal control officer for a while, and I don't know, I can't remember, I don't think he went straight to building official.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yep. He,
So he's been-
1994 is when he started with the police department, and then he moved up here in 2002.
So, well, congratulations to retirement. Like I had said earlier, tonight I had the honor of, it's called a black helmet, where these probationary firefighters get their permanent helmet. So it was Mike Maudsley, Jordan Clarkson, and Alex Cook are the 3 newest members of the fire department that are now off probation. So that was kind of a nice night. They did it in front of the crowd before they did the live burn, so it was a different type. And like the chief said, this is we call it a community fire department, what a better place to do it but here. And we need to do one for the chief. We've never done one for the chief.
We haven't, have we?
No, we need to get that
All right.
on a calendar pretty quick. We do have an EDA meeting immediately following. Basically, it's the same procedure with the budget. Chaska Chan, big football game was held last Friday in the drizzle that started after Jake got done golfing. It was a tackle cancer game. There was 4,600 people. That's how many tickets were sold, so you know there's probably another 400 that were in there some other way.
I put in perspective, because we chose to stay home with my family because the drizzle got us off, but we streamed it, which is a super awesome option. My hometown I grew up is probably about 4,700 people. So it's just that perspective hits you when you move here, and you're like, that'd be like my whole town.
That's like the whole population
And
of
that-
the Target on a Saturday morning.
That's probably true.
And it said, on Channel 11 at 6 o'clock, it says they were expecting 5,000 people. I thought, no way. It was packed. I was really surprised how many. But what I want to get at here is that has become the new rivalry, and they have a jug that they pass back and forth. But what I saw that impressed me the most, I mean, it was a 17-16 game. Chanhassen won. Obviously, a lot of disappointment on the Chaska side. But the sportsmanship that I saw between the two teams, there was no chippiness, there was none of that. They'd make a tackle, they'd pick the other guy up. That, to me, really says what the two communities bring together. And that's what I just, no matter what happened, I was looking at that. No matter, I do have a grandson that plays for Chanhassen. My son coaches for Chanhassen. So it's challenging for me as the mayor of Chaska. But I just, overall, deep down, I'm still a Chaska guy, I'm a grad, and, family's family, but I just like the sportsmanship. I thought it was amazing, and I commend both teams for that and their coaches for teaching that. I mean, that's important.
I think the configurations of the middle schools really help in town too, because, I thought about that one time is that, my boys have been friends with kids that go to Chanhassen High School, and the reason they have been is because they go to middle school together.
Yes.
And so I think the way they have those configured is really good to sort of promote that.
Yeah, it starts them on collaboration and cooperation.
Yeah,
really.
I like I said, I think early on there was some chippiness between the two schools, and I think that is going away, and I'm really happy to see that, and I just wanted to commend both teams for that kind of a sportsmanship. So congratulations to both, and obviously Chan came out a victor here, but chances are they're going to meet each other in the playoffs, and then who knows what happens. So.
And both teams played their hearts out too.
They did.
Right to
I
the
mean,
very
it was a
end.
great game. I mean,
Yeah.
you couldn't, 17-16. So, and then, I don't know, do you guys hear that about that young man from Bloomington that
Yeah.
was paralyzed? That was unfortunately, that was one of our teams.
Yep, Chaska freshman.
Yeah, the Chaska freshman team. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it was anything malicious, but it just,
No,
that
was
poor
probably
kid
a
that made the
terrible
tackle,
accident. Yeah.
just has gotta feel,
Yeah, I heard it was
Yeah.
a pretty normal play. There was a similar situation in Duluth. That came out, the varsity player that just was in the news over this last weekend too.
Oh,
I
sad.
didn't
Similar,
catch
so,
that one, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's-
prayers to that young man from Bloomington. So, as Matt start going, so we do have a meeting back-to-back because of Labor Day Monday. So, we're meeting the 19th. There's no work session. October 3rd, then we come back. We do have a work session, October 17th. Work session's up in the air. There's a 5th Monday, which is Halloween. No plans of now, but you never know if something has to happen.
It'd have to be,
quite the trip.
it'd have to be, yeah, it'd
But
have
I've
to
heard that before.
be, it'd have to be quite the thing.
That's why I'm
to-
saying, there's always that possibility.
I enjoy Halloween.
Yeah. So we have to come to council in costume.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we can have
Mark's
people
already
hit
wearing his.
knock on the door to come in and, candy. It'd be great. Great.
Now, is it this week that the USGA was in town?
They're here on Wednesday,
So this week.
this week, yep.
Okay, so they're basically here in preparations of the 2024 US Amateur. So that's a big deal. We're still under the impression we're only the one other municipal golf course other than us, and this is our second time.
Yep.
We last held at when?
2006.
2006.
Torrey Pines.
Yeah, Torrey Pines is the
Torrey
other
Pines is the other one. So this is kind of a big deal. This is where a lot of these golfers that are on tour now come from. And this is where they get their start. And we host it with Hazeltine. So again, it's unusual for a private and a public course to host, so.
And the last time it was Ricky Fowler, I want to say Dustin Johnson.
Oh, is he there?
Yeah, there.
I knew Ricky Fowler.
Yeah, Ricky Fowler was definitely there. The guy who won it went on, his name's slipping my mind now, but there's, if you go up to the town course, there's a sheet that they all have to sign. And each course got one, and so you could find some names on there that you definitely recognize.
Oh. Cool. And then one other last thing that didn't get mentioned, on September 24th is the 4th annual Oktoberfest at Schramm Brewery. That has really turned into quite an event. And as far as I know, you have to buy tickets in advance, you can't get in.
You
So-
do. You have to buy tickets, but it's also the same weekend as GA's Fest.
And GA has their festival, starts at noon.
And then like Mike had said, the movie on.
Movies at night, yeah.
At night, too.
So you got another fun-filled day.
Yep.
Stuff going on, so. All right, that's all I have. You're out of town, is it next week?
Sunday through Wednesday. I'll be at the ICMA conference.
Okay.
I do have one extra thing that I just thought of, and it's just more for Matt and city staff. Had someone reach out to me, I'm confident I gave the right answer, but I'll just confirm. Was inquiring about Chaska Boulevard, right outside the Curling Center. There's like 3 pillars that have been sawed off for years.
For a while, yeah.
For a while. And he drives by it every day and it really annoys him. I say, I drive by it and it really annoys me. And I told him that we can get feedback, but I'm assuming it's a county project, and that's probably a county fix that needs to happen. And
Yeah,
maybe
I
they're waiting
also,
for something.
well,
I'm
that
just
whole
kinda-
intersection gets reconstructed as part of the
Yeah.
41 project, and so I think that was included in that. That's why they haven't been touched.
But weren't some of those taken down for sightlines too?
Yes. So there was.
There's some sightline issues with those, with cars?
Because if you, down 41, when the bollards were put up, there used to be, I think, like 3 or 4 in a row, and they ended up taking down some because it created such sightline issues that you couldn't see. So all that stuff is gonna get fixed.
Yeah, I think these look like something hit it.
Well, they did, no
And,
doubt.
and like, they don't look like they were taken down on purpose. They look like they've been away. So I just bring that up. I know, I always tell people, it's always interesting if I've learned anything in being on the council is, if it happens in Chaska, naturally it comes to the city's attention, but there's county, there's state, there's a lot of parties involved with this, and so he was gonna reach out to the county side to get some information, but that kind of makes some sense too.
Yeah, because we're actually, even though that's a county road, we're responsible for everything in the medians. The same thing will be on Highway 41, we're responsible for everything in the medians. So you can even have a county road and we can be responsible for some stuff.
Well, but I thought we're not going west of 41 with that.
Yeah, but that's like right at the intersection, what he's
Yeah.
talking about.
Okay.
Right.
I thought we were only staying east side of 41 on this phase.
I'm talking about next summer.
Oh, next summer, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like two missing, and then they started again.
Yeah.
Right before you hit the bench and lighting, that got destroyed. That got fixed.
All right. All right, anyone else, last call? If not, I'd look for an adjournment, and then we would turn around and roll right into the EDA.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember McGraw,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. We are adjourned. Kevin, I can go right in? Okay. All right, we'll call the Chaska EDA meeting to order at 9:39 for Monday, September 12th, 2022. Elise, we call roll, please.
Commissioner Hatfield,
Here.
Commissioner Hubbard. Here. Commissioner Wong,
Here.
Commissioner Gra,
Here.
President Winchell.
Here. All right, moves us to adopting the agenda, are there corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to adopt agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Hatfield,
Second?
second by Commissioner Wong. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Moves on to item 4, approving previous meeting minutes, and that's from the May 16th, 2022 EDA meeting. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by,
Hubbard.
no, I know, Commissioner, right?
Yep.
Commissioner Hubbard, second by Commissioner Hatfield. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. What am I trying to say?
Motion passed.
That's not it. All against signify by saying aye. Couldn't get it out, didn't want to come out, but we all went for it, so we're all good. Next is item 5. This is adopting EDA Resolution 2022-2, establishing preliminary Chaska EDA maximum tax levy for payable 2023.
So President and Commissioners, the item in front of you tonight is for establishing just the EDA's maximum tax levy for 2023. As I talked about in the council meeting, all the impacts that you saw for taxes included this EDA amount, but we still have to take an action to individually adopt this one. The only thing I'll point out is the only thing that impacts the EDA out of everything we talked about in our tax levy policy is new growth plus inflation. We're not impacted by the staffing study. We're not impacted by the building improvements. So the only thing we have to take into consideration for this one is just inflation plus new growth, which is the right around 5% plus 2.717 for new growth. So that's a 7.28% increase, which is an increase of $13,319. That brings the 2023 proposed maximum tax levy to $196,308. So adopting resolution 2022-2 would establish that, and then we would come back at the end of December to adopt the final levy.
196 is proposed. And then we were just barely hitting 100.
What's that?
It seems like it wasn't all that long ago, we were way under 100,000.
Yeah.
Well, is there anyone that has any would like any discussion, further comments? And for everyone watching, again, this is really would be the same presentation that Matt gave us earlier in the evening. So again, we're not just brushing over this. This is pretty much the same information. So if all are good, I would look to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rao,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hubbard. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Other business, anyone? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Hatfield, second by Commissioner Wong to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pose same sign. We are adjourned. Have a good night. See you in a couple.